Welcome to Reason. To get you started as fast as possible, I wanted to take you through a quick overview and orientation of Reason. Once you've got the lay of the land, browsing for sounds and creating new music will become second nature. And the modular playground that is Reason's rack will be ready for you to dive in. Reason is a virtual studio rack of instruments and effects, which runs as a plugin inside your favorite DAW or as a standalone software with its own professional mixer, audio track recording, and a sequencer. Let's focus on the Reason standalone environment in this video. You may have already noticed that the Reason song window is segmented into different sections. In fact, maybe you clicked on this video in Reason's tutorial section. Sections can be collapsed out of the way, or they can be resized to occupy more or less space on your screen. On the far left side of the Reason song window is the browser. Here you'll find all of the instruments, effects, sound patches, samples, and shortcuts to your own favorite devices or presets. And in between these two bookends of the browser on the left and the tutorial section on the right lives the heart of Reason's creative music production. There are three areas: the rack, where instruments and effects can be created and combined; the sequencer, where music and audio clips are recorded and arranged into full productions; and the mixer, where you give your song its final polish by balancing levels or using mix techniques like EQ and compression to give your song more sparkle or warmth. Let's start out in the rack. The rack is where all the instruments and effects used in your song are placed, just like they would be in a real-world studio's rack. To start making sounds, we can simply drag in one of Reason's instruments from the browser. To play this Europa synthesizer, I can either connect a controller keyboard to my computer and Reason will automatically recognize it, or if I don't have a keyboard, I can turn on the on-screen keyboard, which lets me play my laptop's keyboard like a piano. Whenever you create a new instrument in Reason's rack, you'll notice the browser has switched from showing all of Reason's instruments to instead showing us the presets we can choose for the Europa synthesizer now in our rack. I'll double-click a preset. Its settings load on Europa, and you can hear our synth sound has changed. This process of browsing presets can be a great source of inspiration. You'll notice at the top of the browser that we're browsing presets in Europa's Poly folder. If we click on that folder name and we move up one level, you'll see we actually have even more folders categorized for making bass lines, creating effects textures, sounds that are ideal for melodies, and so on. We can explore any of these folders in the same way by double-clicking its name and double-clicking a new preset. If we wanted to, we could move up or down through these presets directly on Europa. If we found a preset we like, we could move on to recording our performance. But if we wanted to customize our sound further with more Reason devices, we could move over to Reason's effects in the browser. Effects can be placed underneath instruments in Reason's rack, and signals will automatically pass from our instrument to the effect. If I were to drag the Audiomatic Retro Transformer underneath my Europa synth and select some of its sound coloration presets, you'll hear our synth sound gets an all-new character and quality from the added effect. And just like that, we've set up a sound in Reason's rack that's all our own by combining one of Reason's instruments with a sound-shaping effect. We're not limited to just combining two devices, though. I could drag another effect into my rack below the Audiomatic Retro Transformer. The RV7000 is a reverb great for making our instrument sound like it's being played in a big epic space. Just like before, our browser has switched to help us select a preset for the RV7000 reverb. I'll select Film Score, a nice long tail reverb, and I'll dial back the dry-wet balance to blend this effect alongside our sound instead of bathing it in 100% reverb. There's another type of effect in Reason called players, but players aren't audio effects. They don't add coloration or character to the audio signal. They operate on the other end of the spectrum by transforming the incoming notes you play on your keyboard to actually change the way you can play instruments in Reason's rack. If I click on the Players category in Reason's browser and drag a Scales and Chords player above the Europa synth in the rack, it now sits perched above our instrument, ready to alter any notes I play on my keyboard. If I set it to C minor, and perhaps activate a switch for an additional bass note below my chord, our Europa synth is transformed from where it started into big-sounding punchy chords. And that, in a nutshell, is how you can start experimenting, making your own sounds in Reason's rack. Of course, experimentation in the rack goes much deeper too, when you're ready. Reason's rack has another side to it, literally. Pressing the tab key on your computer's keyboard flips the rack around to the backside. And here you can see the actual cables that pass signals from device to device. The signal goes out from the back of the Europa synth to the inputs on the back of the Audiomatic, then out from Audiomatic to the audio inputs of our RV7000 reverb. That cabling has been done automatically for us when we drag devices into the rack. But each of these cables is free to be disconnected and plugged in elsewhere. There's a whole world to explore with cabling in the Reason rack, especially if you're the type of music maker who likes modular synthesis, guitar pedal boards, or other ways of thinking about creating new sounds by routing audio and control voltage signals. If that's not you, don't worry. We won't be getting that deep here. If the rack is where you can customize and create your own sounds, then the sequencer is where those creations become beats and songs. Let's bring up the sequencer to explore it. Reason's sequencer works much like the sequencers you'll find in many music production programs. In the Reason song I've been working on so far, we see one track in our sequencer called Onset. That track corresponds to the Europa synthesizer in the rack, which has the Onset preset loaded into it. Sequencer tracks are automatically created when we create a new instrument. If you use the Add Device button in the rack to make a new instrument, like the Kong drum machine, you can see a new track appear in the sequencer. Our keyboard will play whichever instrument is selected in the sequencer. Since we just created a drum machine, that track has the focus in the sequencer and our keyboard plays the Kong drum machine. If we clicked the Europa track to give it focus, we're back to playing the synth we made. The same thing can be done while working in the rack. We can click any device's focus button to select it for play, and when we do, it becomes the selected track in our sequencer as well. Below the sequencer is Reason's transport bar. The transport is where we can control playback, turn on a metronome to keep us in time while recording, and set up important parameters for our song like what tempo it is. Let's record a clip in our sequencer. You can see we now have a MIDI clip in our sequencer with the notes I played on the keyboard. If I double-click Stop on the transport to jump back to the beginning of my song and then press play, we'll hear my performance played back. Of course, you don't need a keyboard at all to make music in Reason. If you prefer to draw in notes with a pencil, you can do that too. Let's add some drums by clicking on the pencil tool and first drawing an empty clip into the sequencer on the drum track. Now I'll double-click the blank clip to open it up for editing. You see the drum pads from our drum machine on the left side, and we use the pencil to draw in our beat, starting with kick drums every downbeat, snare drums every other beat, and for the hi-hats, let's click the pencil tool's drop-down menu and draw multiple notes at once. If we zoom in a bit, our note grid switches from 16th notes to an even quicker 32nd notes for faster accent hi-hats. From here, I'm free to continue building my idea however I like. I could add more instruments in the rack, or I could use the Add Track button in the sequencer to create an audio track and record some vocals. Before long, I've got a song idea happening.
Can you hear me? Did you get this message? Would you say you caught up and seen love? To be rough around the edges, if you can hear me.
And so it's probably worth considering the mix of these instruments and audio tracks, making sure they balance nicely. Reason's mixer is built to look and function just like the professional mixers in the top studios across the world. There are a lot of knobs and creative possibilities here that are far deeper than we'll go today. Let's reduce the visual complexity here by minimizing most sections of the mixer. Starting from the top, I'll double-click the Input section, Dynamics, EQ, Inserts, and the Send section to minimize them out of view. Now the mixer is set up for its most basic functions, balancing volume levels between instruments and placing a track in the stereo listening field using the pan knob. You might notice that we have one mixer channel for each track in our sequencer. In fact, if we click on a track in the sequencer, you'll see its corresponding mix channel flash. Beyond just volume and stereo balancing, you can make some fine-tune adjustments in the mixer too. If I double-click to expand the EQ section, we could, for example, activate the EQ on our vocal and turn up the high frequency band to give it some extra air and sparkle.
Can you hear me? Did you get this message? Would you say we're caught up in a teen love?
Or we could expand the dynamics section to apply some compression. Every channel of our mixer is equipped with a dynamics compressor, a standard studio mixing effect which can automatically adjust the loud and soft volumes in a musical performance. It's particularly useful to even out vocalists, give drums extra punch, bass more sustain, and is even used for special mix effects like getting a synth to pump to the beat. Let's take a look at the send effects section. When you first launch Reason, you have a few useful send effects preloaded into the mixer. Send effects are simply any audio effect like reverb, delay, distortion, etc. that are connected to the mixer in such a way where any instrument or audio track can be sent to that effect and then returned to the mixer to blend in with the original. If we wanted to add a touch of reverb to our vocal, we have a nice reverb already loaded in Send 1. So we activate the Send knob on our vocals mixer channel and dial in how much reverb we want, from a lot
Can you hear me?
to a more tasteful amount.
Can you hear me?
The beauty of send effects are that we can also send any other channel to share the same reverb. If we wanted to create even more send effects, we simply use the Create menu to create a new send effect, choose one of our effects, choose a preset, and now our new send effect is ready to activate on a channel and dial in to taste. The rack in the sequencer, Reason's mixer has advanced features that you can grow into using as you go. You don't need to master every button and setting in Reason to make music. Instead, hopefully today you've gotten an overview of Reason's layout and methodology. The best way to learn from here is to try to make some music of your own. We have more guides to getting started in Reason's tutorial section that will help you as you're getting started, along with many tutorials on our YouTube channel that range from beginner to advanced topics. Where you go from here is just a matter of experimentation and having fun with sounds. Don't be afraid to try things out. I promise you, it's nothing a little visit to the undo function can't fix if things turn out not like you expected. But here's a little tip from my own music making. It's the unexpected results that are often the best discoveries. I'm sure you'll find the same thing in your music too. Good luck and have fun.